what is the most important decision we make in life? What is the most important decision we make in life? Now, a lot of people in this class would give a pretty standard answer, I think, to this, but what if you would ask somebody you know that may not be a Christian, what is the most important decision that you will make in life? What do you think they would say? And in probably less than a minute, you can come up with some options. It might be, will I get married? If so, to who? Big decision. What will I do for a job? Will it be something that I am passionate about, that I have to go to school for? Where will I live? What part of the country? My wife hates New England. She would much rather be in a warmer weather area. Will it be in a big city? Will it be in a suburban area, rural? Like, where will I live? And then, is there some life adventure that I want to accomplish? Climb a mountain, write a book, something big that you want to do. Now, these are important decisions, but are they the most important decision? And I would say, all of us would say, no, it's a decision that impacts this life and the next. It impacts the eternal destination of our soul. So I would say it's this: will I commit to following the true God? Now you'll notice there's two aspects to this question, right? What is the truth about God? And then it becomes personal. Will I commit to following that truth? So there's really two parts here. In this one, what's the truth about God, tells us some important things, right? Tells us about who we are, tells us about who our Creator is, tells us about our purpose in life, depending on what this answer is, right? And will I commit to following the truth impacts potentially the eternal destination of our soul. So eternity is essential here. Eternity is essential. And I think too frequently people gloss over that word, eternal. So there's an interesting illustration that I heard that I think is helpful. If you were to take a line and draw it across the entire universe, this blew the mind of my 11-year-old. What? Draw a line across the entire universe? That would be a long line. And let's say this line represents your existence. What portion of that line would be your life on earth if there is life after death? It would be a dot. It would be microscopic. It would be extremely small. A lot more of this line would be life after death. So to me, it is surprising how apathetic people are to the truth about God when this is what is at stake, right? And Jesus makes this point, right? Jesus makes this point in one of my favorite verses: for what good will it do a person if he gains the whole world yet forfeits his soul? Because the focus is here, right? So these are important decisions, and I think the truth about God actually impacts these decisions as well, but they are not what's most important. What's most important is eternity. Okay, so the truth about God is important. That's step one. But now, what is the truth about God? If you were to ask somebody that, a stranger, or maybe a family member as well, some people might say this: all truth is relative. All truth, this is a common phrase in the country today. And what do they mean by that? They mean it's just up to somebody's opinion, right? So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this, but we've got to spend some time on what determines truth. What determines truth? Because there are some situations where truth literally is based on the opinion of a person. Okay? It is what we call mind dependent. It's based on what you internally feel, your preference. There are other circumstances where truth is based on something outside of a person, what we call an object, right? So it could be either one of these. The first one, since truth is based on a subject, this is known as subjective truth. This one that's based on an object is called objective truth. Now you might be saying, okay, well, getting into a lot of terminology. this is really important because it's going to impact other topics we talk about, such as morality. All right, so and I'm going to show you why what's happening here. But let's make sure we've got these down. Let's have a little bit of fun with this. If I were to ask, what is the best ice cream flavor?
Subjective.
That is subjective. It's based on each person, right? I literally would say something along that's vanilla based. My wife would definitely be chocolate based. The truth is grounded in our preference, right? What is the best movie of all time? Subjective, right? So again, this is a personal preference. This is subjective truth. So there are legitimate cases where truth is subjective. Okay? This car is blue. This is objective truth, right? It's based on the object, not what I personally feel. This is objective truth.
What if somebody's colorblind?
So that's a great question. What if somebody's colorblind? Is the car still blue?
Doesn't take away from the blueness of the car.
The car is still blue. They may not be able to see it, but it's still blue, right? Their perception of it's not there, but the truth is grounded in the object. You know, one of the ways that you can differentiate this is if you held opinion and you die, does the truth still hold, right? So I say Oreo ice cream is the best ice cream. Now, when I pass away, that truth dies with me. Somebody can say, well, he thought that, but essentially that truth dies with me. When I die, is the car still blue?
Yes.
Absolutely. So that's one way you can distinguish between these. Yeah?
How about this, though? The car is only blue, right? Because we've agreed on the definition of what blue is.
Well, okay. So I would say it's still this color. We are agreeing on the definition of blue, right? But the blueness is based on the object. We just have come up with a conventional term, the word, is your point, right? Okay. How about this one? What is the answer? Is this objective or subjective truth? Objective. This is objective, right? Again, it's not a tangible thing, an object, but it still is something that is separate from our preference and opinion. Okay, so we know that there are some circumstances that have objective truth and some that have subjective truth. Now, here's what happens. Here's what's happening more and more in our culture, and this is the spiritual warfare aspect of this. Actually, let me correct this first. This is the definition we all want with regards to truth. Truth is what corresponds to reality. Whether that is the car is blue or Jason believes Oreo ice cream is the best, so those are still based on reality. But here's what is happening in our culture. This is getting faded away, pushed away with regards to morality, with regards to God, with regards to gender identity. There's a lot that's getting pushed away, and it's saying it's all subjective. Watch the top for a second. Instead, truth of being corresponding to reality, it's truth corresponds to my reality. Okay, and that's where we start to get into problems from with relation to biblical truth. So,
When people say, this is my truth.
This is my truth. Yes, that's a great. We're going to get to that. I'm going to show you a quick little video in a second. Now, if all truth is subjective, you know what that's known as? All truth is relative. That's what they mean. All truth is relative, meaning that it's all based on personal opinion. Unless I have it. Now it's absolute and it's objective. Everybody should follow what I think. This happens a lot, actually. All right. To your point, this language happens a lot in society. We talk about your truth. A famous example of this was at the Golden Globes. Oprah Winfrey, she was accepting an award, and she was talking about how women were coming forward and sharing their stories where they were abused. And that was a good thing, but notice how she talks about it. Let me make sure I've got this loud enough.
Speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have.
What'd she say? Speaking your truth. This just permeates the culture. And I actually think it dilutes the message to some degree, right? What I think is more powerful is speaking the truth. what happened to these women? Speaking, not my perspective, because if you go with that, then they might have their own truth or version of the story. I think you encourage people to speak the truth in what happened. Now, again, this is the battle, right? There are some things that are subjective truth, but not all things. Not all things. And this is the battle we've got to start with when we're fighting against this. This is an easy example. 2 plus 2 is 5. If somebody were to say that, excuse me, if somebody were to say that, we would say no. We would say they are wrong. No matter how much they fought against us, we would say that this is not true. All right. So let's get to this. Is the truth about God based on opinion? That's what this comes down to, right? There are some subjective truths. There are some objective truths. What about this one here? Is the truth about God based on opinion? Does our preference determine what happens to us when we die?
No.
No. And I think it's pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised at the distortion here. Here's Gandhi, right? Gandhi was from India, and he was Hindu. He tried to mix in some other stuff, including Christianity, but he was basically Hindu. And he stood up. He's known for fighting against Britain's control of India with peaceful protests, right? So Gandhi became very famous. But with regards to religion, notice what he says. Nobody in this world possesses absolute truth. This is God's attribute alone. Relative truth is all we know. Now, first off, this is a little bit self-refuting, because notice what he says. Nobody in this world possesses absolute truth. That's an absolute statement. So is this true? Right. And I don't know that he realizes what he's doing. He's making an absolute statement here, but then saying that this is all we have. So I'd almost ask him, if this is all you have, how do you know this? How do you know this absolute truth? He goes on and says, therefore, we can only follow the truth as we see it. Such pursuit of truth cannot lead anyone astray. That's dangerous. But this is the mindset. And you know what's going on here? Is we've come to a point in culture where nobody wants to insult people, right? And where if you say something that disagrees with their perspective on religion, you're called intolerant. And it's really the most unloving thing you can do, right? Is just affirm whatever they believe. One of my administrative assistants said, as long as you're sincere, in what you believe, you're all set. Now, if I leave that where it's at, is that true? No, and that's really dangerous. Now, again, I want to maintain gentleness and respect, but we've got to correct these elements. This fear that we're going to make somebody uncomfortable with religious truth, spiritual truth, we've got to get over that, because there's too much at stake with eternity. This is the famous illustration that's used with this principle, in that let's say you had 6 blind people all trying to find truth with regards to this object. Now, this object is supposed to represent, like, God. And this first person here touches the tusk and says, oh, this is a spear. I can't see it, but what I'm touching, this represents a spear. And this woman touches the trunk and said, no, this is a snake. And this person touches the air and said, no, it's a fan. This one touches the side and says, no, it's a wall. This one touches the leg and says it's a tree, and this woman touches the tail and says it's a rope. And what they're trying to say was that they all have some portion of the truth. That's what this illustration is it's meant to fit with what Gandhi was saying. The problem and why this doesn't fit is that religions don't just have different perspectives, they have contradicting perspectives. They have things that contradict each other, so they both can't be true, right? What does an atheist say about God? God doesn't exist. What do Christians say about God? God exists. Can they both be right? No. What do Christians say about Jesus dying on the cross? He did die on the cross. What do Muslims say? He did not die on the cross. Can they both be right? No. So we got to see that religions don't just have different aspects, they have contradicting aspects. I like this picture because this illustrates the point. If you were to come to I'm teaching my daughter to drive right now. She's got her permit. It's scary. It is scary. So we came up, you saw a stop sign and then no stopping anytime. These are two contradicting things. They can't both be true, right? And we know this. This is actually a law in logic. It's called the law of non-contradiction. That two things cannot be opposite and both be true in the same sense at the same time. They just cannot. And fundamentally, we know that. I think we generally know that. This is a good example. Who is God? We say God is three in one. One essence and three persons. No other religion has this view. Ask a Mormon, ask a Jehovah's Witness who uses a lot of Christian language. They do not believe this. So again, this idea does not work. And this idea is called pluralism, that we are all just following different paths up the same mountain. Right? You probably have heard something like this. This is a Hindu proverb. There are hundreds of paths up the mountain, all leading to the same place. So it doesn't matter which path you take, the only person wasting time is the one who runs around the mountain telling everyone that his or her path is wrong, you Christians. So again, what they're saying is that we're all going to get to the top of the mountain. We're all just taking different paths up there. Is that true? No. Is that what Jesus said? No. No. Again, my favorite verse of all time is John 14:6. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. And then he doubles down. Right? You see this in Scripture a lot, that God will double down on this when something's of important. No one comes to the Father except through me. This is exclusive.
Well, isn't Christianity written before all the other religions out there?
They all start in various perspectives. Now again, I'm going to hold to a high level of Christology and bibliology and say that it starts from the beginning with Adam and Eve. Right? And so, but actually when it got recorded, written down, could be later than some of these other texts, but the story starts with God, starts with Christianity. Yeah. And we'll get to more about Scripture. We get to the Bible. Yep. So someone may follow like more of a relativist, but this again is not the way to approach it. Well, personally, I believe this, and relativism, not good. The question then becomes, is somebody really open to following the truth from God? I think there's a lot of people who are not open. They don't want the truth. They can't handle the truth. That reminded me of this movie. Remember this?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Great line, right? Great scene in a movie. And I think, if you take a step back, though, I think that's where some people are with God. And it's a sad. We wouldn't have this kind of an exchange, but there's some people who don't want the truth. And that's actually why there's hell. So when we get to how could a loving God send somebody to hell, we're going to talk about this aspect of free will. Now, what happens is, I think for a lot of people when it comes to God, is this, and this is dangerous. They look at God as a buffet line. And let me take the things I like and let me leave the things I don't like. And some of that might be, hey, there's a few things in Christianity I like, there's a few things in Buddhism I like, and hey, I like that, maybe that other thing that is Zoroastrianism, I'll take that as well. But you know what that's called? That's idolatry. We're kind of basically making our own religion, our own belief system. We've got to be open to following the truth as we get it from the Word of God. The other last point here I want to make about truth is, and this is a new term, I don't know if anybody's heard of this, Christian deconstructionism. This is starting to gain some popularity where people are deconstructing their faith. In the past, when they deconstructed it, they just walked away. They kind of took apart all these different beliefs they were taught and said, I don't like this, I don't like that, and then sometimes they just walk away. Now, they are putting it back in a way that fits internally what they desire. Now, not all Christian deconstruction is wrong, but I want to use an illustration. So let's say you've got an Eiffel Tower of Legos. And it's an Eiffel Tower, but it's filled with a lot of different colors. Now I want to put that back to the way it was, so I'm removing the cultural influence on my spiritual truth and putting something back to the way it was. And notice I'm using the manuals to get this. So this would be like Christians saying, okay, you know what? There are times when people get a little off kilter with the truth about God. Let me go back to the source to get this right. Yes, that's the basis, that's the foundation, that's the canon. But a lot of people are doing this. Instead, they are deconstructing it so that they can have what they desire and what they prefer. So they're making their own thing, which is no longer even an Eiffel Tower. So we can talk more about this Christian deconstruction, but that is something that's going on. That's not good. All right, let's summarize. Here are the issues with truth. Number one is with people who have apathy. Like, I just don't care. It's not on my mind right now. I just don't care about God. So we want to ask, is there anything more important than the truth about God? Relativism. I can simply decide yes or no, whatever I believe goes. But do our opinions really determine the truth about God? I would say no, clearly not. Pluralism, this belief that all religions are true. Do we believe that? How can this be true when you have things that contradict? And then lastly, we just talked about idolatry. Are we letting our preferences determine what we believe about God? That's a big problem that's going on because right now in this country it's all about self. It's all about you. It's very narcissistic. And rather than looking outwardly at the truth about God. This is my last slide. I'm going to hand out the homework. This is, I think, a very important point. Truth matters to God. Truth mattered to Jesus. When he was before Pilate, this is what was recorded. Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I am a king. For this purpose I have been born, and for this I have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." So Jesus came to die for humankind, but he also came to share spiritual truth about the condition of human beings and the truth about God. So truth is critical, and for some people we've got to start there when we're trying to share the gospel. All right, let me pass this out real quick because I've got to get you out of here. You can take one of these and just kind of pass them back.